I was not happy about having to follow you. Now I get the extra time. Great job. It's good to know that we've got men of God that are in strategic positions, not only serving in the House or Senate or the White House, not to mention all the aides, all the staff, those at the Pentagon, those that are chaplains. I mean, it's just on and on. But the Heritage Foundation is one of those policy wonk places that give us smooth stones for the slingshot. And so, but man, to hear such a passionate but very practical. So you've done good. I remember when you taught me Sunday school, it really meant a lot to me then, when I was just a boy. I'll pay for that later. All right, if you've got pen, pencil, lipstick, or mascara, let's boogie. We've heard from some incredible people already. Our dear brother that paid such a price. When you're my size, my job as a kid playing football, no one wanted me to run the ball. No one wanted me to catch the ball. No one wanted me to do a dance in the end zone. My job was to block or tackle. And when I saw the size of the dude coming after you, my brother, and you didn't flinch, I'm telling you, I was going, man, I'm glad he needed some folks blocking for him that day, and that would have been a handful. But what a amazing testimony. So we thank God for you. We've heard from Scott Turner. I knew Scott when he was on staff at Prestonwood Baptist Church, and you could tell he was a man of God and going to be a lion for the Lord. So I want you to know sometimes when you're in college or you're just making your way through or maybe even just getting started, I don't know where everybody is in the leadership educational journey, but I promise you, what you do today determines all your tomorrows. So I want to give you a couple principles, if I may. 5 perspectives on leadership. Now, when I first started getting involved with leadership, I had to, what does that mean? Be a leader, be a leader. So you look it up in Webster's dictionary. What is a leader? One who leads. Well, all righty then, you write that down. And then you look up, well, what is lead? The action that a leader takes. So we went from nothing on it to, I promise you, the leadership secrets from Attila the Hun to Winnie the Pooh. It's unbelievable. And when I was in Spain a couple years ago, there was a book being touted. Still haven't ever seen the book, but The Leadership Secrets of Zorro. So there you go. There's leadership secrets from A to Z. You and I believe that what's in the Word of God is absolutely the most important. So number 1, let's begin with the end in mind. Stephen Covey really helped make a huge impact in my life some 30 years ago when I began to take 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It was then God gave me the vision for Student Leadership University. How do we give students a 20-year head start in the rules and tools of leadership? And so when you begin with the end in mind, and here you sit, you already know a couple of these terms I'm going to throw out. But first of all, if you're going to ever be serious as a leader, you've got to understand a couple basic principles. Number 1, it's preparation. Now, what does that mean, preparation? Well, it means to be pointed in the right direction. Many of you have done that. You've been raised in church, many of you. You've got a real testimony. You've got a sweet taste in your mouth for the things of God. You got people that are blocking and tackling for you who believe in you. You're at, without question, a school. And by the way, when I first spoke at Liberty University, we could put the entire student body in this room. And if I heard one time, I heard 1,000 times how the church started in a Donald Duck bottling company where they made orange juice. And Jerry would have to go in, Dr. Falwell Sr., and go in and clean the floor and set the chairs up. And the floors were always sticky. He said it was hard to get decisions. The floors were sticky. But I've been a part of Liberty forever. And I'm telling you today, it is without question the most respected Christian, distinctive Christian university in the world, evangelical university in the world. And there's some exciting news coming ahead that I think are going to rock the planet. But it all starts in your leadership journey. And no matter what your rank is, no matter how well you're doing, no matter how far along you are, I want to ask you to just consider a couple things. What does it mean to be prepared? Number one, in the Latin, the word paro, it means to be pointed in the right direction. Now, I'd like to think when you come from a distinctive Christian family, you got a family that loves the Lord and they put a sweet taste in your mouth for the things of God. I went through 6 broken homes. I went through 6 foster homes. I went through 6 detention centers. So 666 makes me a little nervous, all right? So I didn't get off to a good start. I was 17, hair to my waist, and a junkie, and was told I couldn't graduate. I'd missed too many days of school. I don't know if you know it or not, but homeroom is where they take roll. Hello. That would have been helpful for somebody to tell me that, but I wasn't smart enough to figure it out. So I didn't get off to a good start. I was one of those long hair freaks, junkie, who gave his life to Christ in the Jesus movement. And Jesus rocked my world, changed my life. I had a big mouth, and so away I went. So I've always looked at things a little different, but it's only because it's the only way I know. But I promise you, when I began a leadership journey, and I really wanted my life to count, that's when I realized, number one, I've got to be pointed in the right direction. Number two, you've got to be equipped for battle. And number three, you have to be complete. And I believe when you give your heart and life to Jesus and he steps out of heaven, steps in your heart, I believe he begins that process of making us complete. You know, Romans chapter 8, verse 3 says, if God is for us, who could be against us? Now, you can just write in the margin of your Bible. I don't want to be throwing around a lot of Greek or Hebrew here, but in the margin of my Bible, when I read that for the very first time, and I still have that Bible from back in the day, if God's for us, who could be against us? I just kind of looked down and said to the devil and wrote it in the margin of the Bible, your mama. I mean, it's just that solid. And that's not preacher talk. It's not a bumper sticker. It's not Sunday school. It is a fact. So if you want to be pointed in the right direction, you got to make sure that he is for you. If you want to be made complete, we know we're not complete until he steps out of heaven and steps into our heart. And he does that at an invitation. I had nothing to offer. I had really nothing to give. And he came, made me feel like I was somebody. And that's been for some 50 plus years. It's really more than that. But modesty and the fact that I don't want you to know how old I am keeps me from going into it. So you have to have preparation. Well, here you sit, and you're getting advanced preparation. I promise you, I've been here for maybe an hour now, maybe not quite an hour, and I've heard things I would have given anything to if I could have heard when I was in college and moving forward in the direction God called me. What a great, great idea. Ryan, you and I have known each other a long time, and the vision for this is incredible, and what all Liberty is doing is incredible. But remember, number one, if you want a perspective on leadership, it helps to know what it means. So you've got to be prepared. You've got to begin with the end in mind. And so what does that mean? I didn't know all the different things I would be doing. And I want to tell you, when I began to hear about the Planned Parenthood and some of the things that were shared from our brother and his courageous stand, and what I heard from one of the great institutes in our country, the Heritage Foundation. But I want you to know, and I'm not going to tell you who or when, it's not appropriate, but one of the most influential people on the planet, I never will forget, first conversation. Well, sir, you know, there's two things that matter to evangelicals: pro-life and Israel. And he said, well, you know, those are important things. I feel strongly about those things. And then we began to talk about Planned Parenthood. And if you live in society, you're going to find that some of the most important people in all your counties and all your communities, in your hometowns, and in our country, many of those have been giving to Planned Parenthood for years. And do you know why? Because they wanted to make cancer screens available to those that were house cleaners and those that couldn't afford to go in and get physicals. In other words, Planned Parenthood, yes, they will do health screenings. Do you know that most folks, and Derek, I just say, I believe with all my heart, a lot of folks don't realize. I mean, it's hard to believe in this day and age, but when I began to break down, yes, they do some things like that that are helpful, but they are the number one provider of murder of life in our country, of these precious young children. And so I just want to remind you, when you're prepared, you're like David. David picked up those 5 smooth stones. Why? You think he was worried about missing Goliath? I mean, Goliath's so big, I think he's going, I can hit this. But in case he had brothers, you and I have to prepare ourselves. And it begins, number 1, with asking the Lord to make us complete. It begins, number 2, by you and I asking him to help us be equipped. And number 3, Lord, point us in the right direction. Begin with the end in mind. So make a habit of thinking deeply, dreaming wildly, and lead others to do the same. Number 2, never sacrifice your future on the altar of the immediate. Never sacrifice your future on the altar of the immediate. I wrote a book years ago called Everything Worth Knowing. I learned growing up in Florida. And so I had to do a little research about the state I grew up in. And do you know, one of the things I learned is that Spain traded away Florida for Cuba. Okay? Traded away Florida for Cuba. And you understand, Florida means feast of flowers. And if you know anything today about Florida, you know that almost anything can grow. The weather's incredible, but it had some challenges. The Spanish were tired of fighting the Seminole Indians because they didn't want to give up their homeland. Number 2, they were tired of the swamps. They were tired of wading through those swamps and the alligators. Now, I'm a Florida Gator fan, so I just want to remind everybody that's good advice. At least it used to be, but to be afraid of the gators. But number 3, they were weary of yellow fever from the mosquitoes. And so they had some real challenges. They had some real uncomfort. They had some real hard things they had to slog through. And you know what they did? They traded away their future because of hassles and inconvenience and strain for the moment. Now, I can't speak for you, and maybe it's because, you know, I'm a little weird. My background was like it was. But when I heard that, I said, man, that's me. I've always made the easy decision. Let's get high. Let's go with the crowd. Let's, don't worry about it. And you know what happened? I was sacrificing my future. Why? On the altar of the immediate. So you're going to have your heart broken. You're going to be promised a position, and then you get there, and it's not there. You're going to have disappointment. You're going to have pain. So I want to challenge you. Never sacrifice your future on the altar of the immediate. You've got to have what we call relentless integrity. And remember, the word integrity, that mathematical term, comes from the word integer, and it means to be complete. It means to be complete. You can't have part of your life where you want your life to count. You can't say on Sunday, that's the day I really love the Lord, serve the Lord, try to learn about the Lord. You can't do things when it's convenient or you've got it on your calendar. In other words, you and I must realize relentless integrity is every area of our life. My Uber driver was late this morning, but how I interacted with that Uber driver is just as important as some of the people I was sitting at the table with that are heroes and folks I look up to. You see, the Uber driver matters. And the young guy on the street that opened the door and said, man, welcome to the Museum of the Bible. He's a big deal. And every one of you are a big deal. And you know why that Ryan has the lineup he has? We think you're a big deal. We don't necessarily think we're that much, but I promise you, straight up, we think you're a big deal. Internal convictions have to outweigh external circumstances. I just had hand surgery. They've rebuilt my hand from being a punk all those years ago. Had to reattach my thumb. I still have to have one on my left hand. So just doing the basics and getting dressed took me about 2 hours this morning. But I say that only so you just know you can't let external convictions rob you of your call or of your purpose or of your opportunities that come. So begin with the end in mind. That was the very first Stephen Covey, Habits of Highly Successful People. Never sacrifice your future. Number 3, intentionality. Create and nurture lasting positive relationships. Can I be honest with you? Relationships is the secret sauce to ever having a life of influence. Meaningful, lasting relationships. I started my day this morning. One of my buddies from high school was hit and killed by a drunk driver as he was on his way to Lowe's doing an errand. His wife's been fussing at him to get done. And he's minding his own business. This guy was an incredible athlete, good-looking guy. I mean, just had it all and was a great friend. And this morning, here we are dealing with the loss of a friend. And how's this family and what's going on and do they need any help? Are they all right? Fine. I mean, I hadn't seen Rick for some years, so I wanted to make sure, right? In other words, relationships matter. And relationships may be somebody sitting at that table right now. And you may not know it, but one day you want to be able to say, we go back. That young lady's remarkable. That young guy, everybody knew then, man, God had a plan and a purpose for him. Build relationships, not for what you get out of it, but what you can offer. I promise you, the secret sauce are people that say, I know that guy, I like that guy, I know that lady, I admire that lady, I enjoy watching her, I've been blessed by that person. In other words, the people that some of us kind of take for granted could well be the folks that are opening doors or blocking and tackling for you the rest of your life. You know, last time we had a class reunion, and I'm going to be a little blunt. A guy stood up and said, wait just a minute. I just heard that Jay Strack has been married to the same woman longer than anybody in our class. And he goes, that's impossible. There's no way. And then somebody talked about the number of books I'd written. And that same guy said, he never even knew we had a library. I promise you, if you held a gun on him, he wouldn't be able to tell you where the library was on our campus. And our high school was called Marijuana High by the governor of the state of Florida. That's kind of encouraging. And they put a sign out front, high school. I mean, so everybody knew. But I want you to know, having a testimony, and not all of us were careless and, IQ below plant life like I had. But I want you to just I value my friends from back in the day, from back on the streets, from who I was in a detention center. I value those relationships as much as I do when I get to meet some pretty cool, pretty important people. So I just want to remind us, relationships matter, but you've got to be intentional, and you got to nurture it in lasting positive relationships. Are you the positive one? Are you the encourager? Share the gospel every day with as many people as you can. Sometimes it's a 30-second, hey, man, thanks, buddy, God bless you. Say, man, are you doing good? Everything all right? In other words, there's so many ways that you and I can add a little value, a little light, a little encouragement. And then I want to ask you this question: who's your five? Please write that down. Who are my five? I live in Orlando, but I grew up in Fort Myers. Let me tell you one quick thing about Fort Myers. Thomas Edison moved there. You ever heard of him? And he had his winter laboratory there. He was there 6-7 months a year. Well, 2 years later, Henry Ford moved there. The next year, Harvey Firestone moved there. The next year, Charles Lindbergh, you remember him? First man to fly solo. And I want you to understand, those men did life together. We just had the National Prayer Breakfast. It's been going on since the 50s. A guy named Doug Coe started that. But do you know that back almost 55 years ago, maybe 60 now, Billy Graham, Bill Bright, and Doug Coe, no one had ever heard of any of them, said, man, let's do life together. Let's hold each other accountable. Let's be there for each other. Let me use an old phrase again. Let's block and tackle for each other. Look at what all Bill Bright, Campus Crusade, Billy Graham, household word globally for preaching the gospel. And then, of course, Doug Coe started that movement called the National Prayer Breakfast. I spent last night and tonight, I'll spend the night at the Cedars. That's where it all started. And so there's something about, how about when you go to Oxford, Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, what did they decide? Do life together. What about the Holy Club at Oxford with Whitfield and the Wesley brothers and so many other? I mean, I just want to say to you, I don't think you realize who all's in this room. And not look at it, well, what can they do for me? But I'm just trying to remind you the power of positive, meaningful, lasting relationships. And by the way, none of those people were all that, with the exception of Edison. But the rest that came down there hadn't yet really had all their big moments yet. So do life together. And that's what's so exciting when you make it an offering to the Lord. Don't try to do it on your own. Healthy relationships will come back to you forever. And then number 4, don't despise small beginnings. My first church had 17 members. I told them everything I knew and made up some stuff and went 15 minutes. And a bunch of older folks came down crying at the altar, and I'm thinking, dear Jesus, I'm sorry, I did my best. I asked the music guy, was it that bad? And he said, no, son, they're not crying. God spoke to them. And they end up calling me to be pastor. My first church had 17 members, and we grew to about 260. My first revival was in a Piggly Wiggly abandoned grocery store building. And then we had to move to the high school stadium. And so my first high school assembly, I ended up speaking 10,000 schools, or 10,000 assemblies, sometimes 3 or 4 same school. But I just want you to know, You know how it all started? A principal said, would you come speak at our school? I said, are you out of your mind? No. We booed the astronauts that came to our school in Fort Myers. What are they going to do to me? No, I know you reap what you sow. I know the Lord's going, yeah, let Jay go out there. Remember the astronaut? I mean, I'm thinking of 100 reasons not to do it. And that was my very first high school assembly. Some of these schools I spoke to, they had to give the helmet to the offensive player when he ran off the field, would give the helmet to the guy that was playing defense. And I ended up being able to speak at Black Mountain to all the FCAs, and Tom Landry was there. He invited me to come speak to the Cowboys. And I'm just saying, hear me. Does it make sense? Don't just, whenever you get an opportunity, give it everything you have. And last of all, so never despise small beginnings. Whatever your job, do it well. Care about the people you work with. Do it with enthusiasm. And here's one that always helps me. Feel your muscle, not your pulse. Feel your muscle, not your pulse. Students, I want to tell you something straight from an old dude, still cool, but an old dude. You have no idea. You better buckle up. You better get ready for an e-ticket ride. I'm from Orlando, can you tell? God has a plan for you. And I just want to encourage you. Feel your muscle. We all have days. I can barely think because of the pain in my hand. But feel your muscle, not the temporary little things that sometimes distract us. And Liberty, the world is waiting to see what this gifted group of young men and young women are going to do. God bless you, man. Thank you.